Hey everybody and welcome. Hope you're having an amazing day today. It's absolutely gorgeous here in Kansas. Hello friends, my name is Dr. Heather Carden and welcome to Ask Dr. Heather. My goal here on this page is actually to help answer questions that you have about everyday health problems or maybe current health problems and help give you some answers so you can actually take some action on your own health, be your own advocate, and actually help change your current health status. And that's the amazing thing. The body always wants to heal. You can change your health status. Maybe not make it perfect, but maybe you can actually stop things from progressing or maybe even reverse or remiss a little bit of things. Think about this as our friends are jumping on. I want to know where you guys are coming from. Amy, I know where you're from. Amanda, I know where you're from, but I always want to know where you guys are coming from. So I am currently doing a 10-part series on keto basics, just common questions people are giving me. So yesterday we talked about constipation because I had a whole bunch of people say keto and constipation. And then I've had a lot of people saying PCOS. It seems to be a very, very hot topic right now, polycystic ovarian disease. So we're going to simply talk about things you guys want to know about, and we want to keep this under 10 minutes. So welcome for joining me. Always let me know where you're coming from. This information is for you to share. I also put my blog up above. My blog is askdrheather.net. There is a free, when you subscribe to the blog, which is free, there is a free downloadable guide to help kickstart your day in the right way. But let's get right down to business. PCOS, polycystic ovarian disease. If you know someone, if you are someone, if you have a daughter, a sister, a granddaughter, or a neighbor, or somebody with PCOS, you may know that with traditional medicine, they feel super helpless. Maybe they don't know there's things that you can actually do to help remiss some of the symptoms or actually reverse some of it, or 10% of PCOS is genetic, actually reduce your likelihood of actually developing PCOS. So PCOS, what are the symptoms? But first, before we go to symptoms, I want you to think about this. Current day, they are calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. They're actually calling PCOS diabetes of the ovaries. It seems a bit odd, but we know that high insulin levels are what causing and driving testosterone up, and it's causing the cyst formation on the follicles of the ovaries. So think about that. Polycystic ovarian disease is diabetes of the ovaries. So we're going to talk about some 5 easy things that you can do to help, again, eliminate some of the symptoms. So again, if you know someone, please share this. Take a moment, share them, tag them. You can share it through Messenger to keep privacy, whatever you want to do, but definitely want to help you. So I've got too many pages of notes as usual. I want to make sure I hit those. So what are some of the signs and symptoms that people may notice? So often it's irregular cycles, having some amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, irregular cycles, even facial hair, which is coming from the high insulin level, which is leading to high testosterone, which is leading to facial hair, obesity, acne, infertility. Of course, ultrasound will have cysts on the ovaries, sleep apnea. We also know that with PCOS, you have quadrupled the chance of developing type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is one of the top diagnosed diseases amongst children today. So if you're a person who is between the age of 15 to 40, this actually could be you. Quadruple the risk of having type 2 diabetes. You actually triple your risk of depression when you have PCOS. You also increase your risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We've often talked before about how cholesterol breaks down into all your sex hormones. So it makes sense that you could actually have high triglycerides that dump onto your liver, causing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And so we talked about those increased risk. Again, diabetes is one of the most painful diseases. Heart attacks, not very painful. People just have a heart attack and pass away. But diabetes, whether it's feet, neuropathy, amputation, blindness, so many issues. But normally you're going to find obesity, acne, and infertility with that. So knowing that those are the major symptoms of it, and knowing that now we're calling it diabetes of the ovaries, 90% of the symptoms can actually be controlled by lifestyle. 10% is genetic. Again, if it's genetic component, then no, when we suggest lifestyle stuff, it's everything that you can do to help that trigger from being pulled and you actually developing the disease that we're talking about. So today's PCOS because you guys have asked me about that. So what do we do about PCOS? So we talked about some of the symptoms. We talked about the AKA name about it. So if we know that it is due to high insulin, so people who are overeating carbohydrates, overeating processed sugar, actually drive and elevate up the blood sugar, which drive up the insulin, which to cause the follicles to actually become polyps or follicles or cysts to become inflamed. It makes sense, number one, that we actually stop eating a high sugar diet. So whether it's a paleo low carb, keto diet, whatever you can do to reduce the sugar is absolutely going to help PCOS. So we also know that eliminating some estrogenic foods or foods that are also high in testosterone. So any of the creatinine stuff, if you're a female who's doing bulk bodybuilding, or even cutting out the soy and cutting out some of the dairy products can also help. Cutting out all inflammatory foods. This is an inflammation of the ovarian follicle, ovarian follicle will equal the cyst formation. So if we know that we can reduce the insulin, reduce the blood sugar, we also want to reduce the inflammation from inflammatory causing food, which is processed foods. Not only just food dyes, food coloring, food additives, artificial sugars. And hey guys, thanks again for joining. But you also want to get rid of some of the rancid oil. So these inflammatory foods that we call like fried foods, or those vegetable oils, which is generally canola or soybean oil, things like that, that we actually need to eliminate out of the diet. So we reduce the sugar, which reduces the inflammation, which helps stop the increase of the follicle. We actually stop the inflammatory foods, which actually stop the inflammation of the ovaries. We cut out sugar additives like red dye number 40 and nitrates. We cut out artificial sweeteners like aspartame, and we can go down that whole list. Cut out just straight processed sugar like honey and things like that. Number two, so number one is eliminating processed sugar and all processed food. Number two, sleep. Sleep is when our hormones, specifically cortisol, actually has to dive back down, recycle, and restart again. So we know that when we can get proper sleep, it actually lowers down our blood sugar level. I've shared a story the last 3 days that my husband read an article last week, and I need to get that article published, but they took college students who had normal blood sugar markers. 3 days, they had them actually have reduced sleep, interrupted sleep, shortened sleep pattern. They did not get more than 7 hours of sleep. Within 3 days, they already started developing markers of blood sugar imbalances. Just 3 days. So we know that that can increase your risk of diabetes. And if we're calling PCOS, diabetes of the ovaries, it makes sense that we've actually got to get sleep going. So I have a good video on sleep hygiene that talks about 20 minutes how you can help your bedroom sleep, which is making it darker, calming down your brain, so you actually reset and restart those hormones, which is super, super important. We also know sleep apnea is an issue which is caused by inability to sleep. So if you have a lot of inflammation, you have chronic sinus issues, all that can cause sleep apnea, which can also lead to having a non-regulated sleep pattern, which can lead to also your blood sugars being out of balance. There's also some pharmaceutical drugs that actually can increase that. So things like steroids, antifungals, those, you can look that up as well. Those actually will increase the cortisol level, which will increase your insulin level, which will increase blood sugar level, which will increase the PCOS symptoms. So check pharmaceuticals and steroids. Again, if you need to be on them for your doctor, please have that conversation with them. But again, just look that up, ask your pharmacist, and they can go through those symptoms with you. We also know there's lots of supplements that can actually help. So number one, vitamin D is super important for getting you to sleep. Magnesium and calcium are our body's natural tranquilizers, super important for getting you to sleep. So just have those levels checked with your physician and just see that you're in the optimal range for vitamin D, which should be 60 to 80. Magnesium should be over 2.2 to 2.6. Calcium should be 9.7 to 10.1. Also get your thyroid checked. We know that the thyroid itself makes T3 and T4. It's converted via iodine in the liver. So we also know hormones are made in the liver. We also know the highest concentration of iodine is actually in the ovaries. So oftentimes the thyroid will rob the iodine from the ovaries because we need iodine to convert T3 to T4. Again, done in the liver, it makes sense that we also need to make sure that there's not some type of thyroid imbalance, and just have them check T3, T4 uptake, free T4, a complete thyroid panel to make sure there's not an imbalance there. You can also test halides to see if maybe you have a heavy metal toxicity, maybe from mercury or amalgam in your mouth, or maybe you work in a nail salon, maybe you work outside. We've also got a series of hormone disruptors about even getting the candles out of your house and using all natural skincare, all natural dryer sheets. So that's a whole nother conversation. But again, there's a whole big list. So with PCOS, eliminating the hormone disruptors can absolutely help. Identifying what supplements your body needs can also help. Helping your adrenal glands with herbs like chaste tree or licorice root or ashwagandha. All those things can actually help your adrenal glands. But again, work with the healthcare provider. Just don't randomly pick things up. But know that there is help with PCOS. Oftentimes people have that label, I have PCOS, and maybe it's an infertility issue, which I also talk about being an invisible disease, or or maybe it's about acne. It's not invisible, but you're having acne. It's not about infertility for you. People think there's just no help. They feel helpless in this situation because no one's ever talked to them about lifestyle changes they can do, about it being diabetes of the ovaries, it being cut out the processed sugar, cut out the inflammatory processed fats and foods. Get your sleep pattern regulated. So important. And then look at the pharmaceuticals, or look at natural things you can do to help your body regulate those natural hormones. And then number 4 is going to be exercise, right? Get moving. How do we get rid of glucose and glycogen? We get moving. What happens is when you overeat sugar, or every time you have a carbohydrate, your body elicits insulin, you get glucose. So we're hypothetically saying that PCOS is just diabetes of the ovaries because we're having over excess of carbohydrates, over excess of insulin, which is causing the follicles to actually become cyst, and that's the polycystic part of the ovarian syndrome because it's multi-complex, as we're finding out today. So knowing that exercising gets out there and burns out the sugar. So we also know that can totally help. There are a lot of different supplements as well. We talked about iodine, calcium, magnesium, ashwagandha, N-acetylcysteine, checking your iodine levels as well. We do that through a 24-hour challenge test to see if people actually need iodine, which is super healthy for your ovaries. I'm also a super fan of using Prova's exogenous ketones because it does help balance out your blood sugar. I also like their tea they have because it has some serotonin in it, along with some rooibos tea, which helps balance out your blood sugar. So anything you can do to help lower your overall insulin load is how much does our body use, and balance out the amount of times that we're over carbohydrate feeding can absolutely help. So you can take that diet, again, not being perfectly keto, but start if you're doing 200 or 300 carbs, cut that in half and go to 100, or maybe you're doing 100 and cut that in half or in thirds and do 60 or 70 carbs, and then do that intermittent fasting that we've talked about. So most of these points I've talked about, I actually have a full video on, probably 10 minutes, but I got so many people saying, help us, PCOS, help us. So that's what I want to do today. Eliminate the sugars, eliminate the processed food, look at the pro-inflammatory food, stop eating the garbage, get your body sleeping, get your body moving, work with a healthcare provider who can suggest herbs or nutrients or macronutrients that your body actually needs to help get it functioning. And know that these can actually hopefully slow down the process or evolution, maybe stop it from being triggered if you're one of the genetic people. And we know that there's so many symptoms like we talked about before, but when that treatment comes down to it, we have to target sleep, we have to target sugar, and we have to get moving. So hopefully I have helped answer your questions about how can diet and lifestyle help with PCOS, how can keto help with PCOS. That's how keto does. We know that when you're on a high-fat diet and fats don't require any insulin at all, we know your blood sugar is the most stable when you're in a ketosis stage, which your body's burning fat for fuel. Most of the time with PCOS, there is an obesity call, so over 24% body fat. We know that we have to get that body fat down in order to help that insulin load. That's getting moving, getting in a state of ketosis, and burning that fat for fuel, and then start eating whole, real green foods. Things like fishes, which are high in iodine, lots of greens, which actually help bind up excess testosterone, because the excess testosterone is often what we find on lab work, not just ultrasound. We find the cyst on the ovaries, but some people having facial hair, that's a big sign of it. You know, uncontrolled acne, you know, that's not estrogenic related. That can also help. So hopefully you guys have got some tips. You know, I always talk super quick because I want to get a lot of value out in a short period of time, because time is super important for everyone. So today is day 4. You can look at the last 3 days of Keto Life questions, and I want to know what we're going to talk about tomorrow, because I often take your questions and we actually just build on that. So we could talk about blood pressure, somebody said. We could talk about thyroid. That's always a super common question. But, you know, we did talk about hormones, but people said target down to PCOS. So hopefully this really helped you. Stacy, I hope you find some value in this. That's great. Stacey said her PCOS is actually why she started on there. So what I normally do is just kind of stop our Facebook Live, and then I actually come back in an hour or two. I've got some calls to make and some patients, and then I'll help answer those questions. But I do want you guys to share this with people who you know may be suffering, maybe feeling helpless, feeling like there's no options for them, because there's something that you can do, and that's what it's about. What can I do to help my body facilitate the healing process? If I need a kidney, I know I could get a kidney from somebody else to make my body function better. If I break my leg, we know that can heal as well. You know, if I cut my face and fall down, if I've got a carpet knife or something, your body will heal. It has those resources. But how it heals is based on the resources that it has to do that healing process. With PCOS, it is definitely linked to obesity. It's definitely linked to a high insulin load, definitely linked to elevated testosterone. So how do we get those loads to balance out? How do we get those? Again, we talked many things: food, moving, sleep, and then positivity and attitude. We talked about you having 3 times the likelihood of having depression if you have PCOS. So surround yourself with happy things. Watch happy shows, listen to happy music, do a gratitude journal. Anything you can do to put your mindset in that positive place is what you want to do. And we know you have a quadruple chance of having type 2 diabetes, so stop it now. Stop the sugar, stop the inflammatory foods, get yourself moving, get yourself sleeping. And again, this is about perfect. This is not about perfect. This is about being a little bit better. So we talked about 5 major things. Each week, take one thing. This week, work on the sugar. Next week, work on the sleep. Third week, work on getting some movement in or exercise. Don't try to do everything at one time or you're not going to have the success. It's little wins every single week. So a 2 or 3 degree shift can make a huge amount of difference. So cut out the sweet tea or soda or alcohol, whatever sugar is you're drinking. Cut that out. Drink water instead, or drink some calm tea, some herbal tea, things that calm stuff down. Stop some of the excess caffeine. So I do hope that I brought some value to you guys today. Again, we've got 6 days left to talk about keto basics, keto lifestyle, and everything you kind of want to know about ketones and why everyone's talking about the ketogenic diet. It's because it's our native state, because what we're doing isn't working. We've been living on the standard American diet, which is 45 to 65% carbohydrates. We have 2 out of 3 women developing cancer, 1 out of 2 men getting cancer, 80% of people dying of heart disease, and it's not because of high cholesterol. That is not why people are having heart attacks. My mom's had a quadruple bypass. I think often share it. My brother-in-law's had a couple heart attacks as well underneath the age of 40. My aunt was 42 and vacuuming and passed away. Her cholesterol was normal. My sister was 48 watching TV. She was did not have high cholesterol, and she passed away with a pulmonary embolism. My mom is an ex-smoker, so she hasn't smoked for 30 years, but had a history of that, so that makes sense. She had a history of having Hashimoto's and using steroids, have some cancer history, so all those kinds of things set her up for having a heart attack. So I know we're talking about PCOS, but I wanted to let you know that the lifestyle things are all hooked together. So polycystic ovarian syndrome. Syndrome means all those bits and pieces to it. But know that if you're working with a healthcare provider that says, I can't do anything, there are lots of doctors, guys. There are a lot of functional wellness practitioners that do amazing work out there. We look for the imbalances. We look for where the signaling component is broken or not communicating, and we eliminate that stress or where that miscommunication happens so the body can move further, faster, and actually have the ability to heal itself, reverse a disease, or slow down the progression of the disease. There's no, I do believe in miracles, but we're not going to talk about that today. We can talk about that a later day. But anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Have a super, super blessed day. I'll be popping on again tomorrow with a new keto basic lifestyle talk. And please join my blog up above, which is AskDrHeather.net. There's 1,000 recipes on there. You can download my Keto Kickstart guide, and I am kicking off my next 10-day Keto Kickstart on September 6th. So if you want more info, you can find all the info on my blog. I'll update that today. And if not, just send me a private message or put your email up above, and I will get you that info. So you guys have a blessed day. Thanks again for joining, and don't forget to share this information with someone you love or know or care about.